Hey guys, what's up? So let us discuss the question 1 to 3 of GS mains paper, and in this the entire paper, that is the 20 questions, will be discussed, and I will provide detailed analysis, keywords, phrases, and everything which you need to remember about it. So model answers for UPSC CSE Mains GS paper 1 of 2017. And basically, the most important problem which a UPSC CSE aspirant faces is that everybody gets the question paper, but nobody gets the answers. Now, how do you phrase them? Like the books which are there in the market, they will just copy paste from Wikipedia, or they will just write more than what is needed or less than what is needed, and highlighting irrelevant facts rather than important points which actually fetches the marks in the examination hall. So in this particular course I have done my modest attempt. Obviously these are not the best answers in the market, but if you watch them and if you practice around them, then you have a very high chance of securing 100 200 rank in the civil service exam. Okay, many people can write better answers, hats off to them, but these are the most jugadu answers. Okay, which is there. Okay, so how do you justify the view that the level of excellence of the Gupta numismatic art is not at all noticeable in later times? So, the Gupta period is considered as the golden age of the classical art in India. So, golden age basically means that this is the period where the numismatics is at the highest level, and it is one of the most significant hallmarks of this period, and that is coinage. And they carried the numismatic tradition of earlier Kushanas and Western Kshatrapas. So basically, what this answer is trying to say is that it is trying to get the previous eras, and they are basically including them, and then they are going forward. So the gold coins, which are known as dinars, they held these inscriptions in Sanskrit, and they showed the king on the one side and goddesses and legends, the most common being the goddess Lakshmi on the reverse side. And so just try to imagine what are the coins. And they also depicted the king playing musical instruments like Samudragupta playing veena, and he performing the Ashwamedh Yagya or horse sacrifice. So basically, what is horse sacrifice now? Just if it is there. So Ashwamedh Yagya basically means that the most powerful king of the region used to let his horse along with guards go amok, and wherever they used to go, so nobody used to stop them, because if they stop them, then they have to go for war in them. Okay, and some other type, mainly the silver ones, carried the images of Garud and Peacock. And with the foreign invasions and the declines of Guptas, the design, execution, purity, and excellence of the coins gradually deteriorated, and the regional coinages were poor in terms of artistic value, and they were even minted in baser alloys like bullion, silver and copper. And even the coinage of the medieval dynasties and the Mughal could not match the bar which was set by the Gupta coins. So that was the level that even after thousands of years, still the later dynasties were not able to match the kind of coins these guys used to produce. So you have covered basically everything, and if you write such an answer, then you get very high marks. And so that is why they were considered the pinnacle on the productions. Question number 2, clarify how the mid 18th century India was beset with the specter of a fragmented polity. So what does it mean by it? So the political scenario in the mid 18th century, so what they are trying to say is that we had a very fragmented polity, and India was characterized by chaos and anarchy here. And the various changes that took place during this period, there were a lot of changes which were going on, and it include decline of Mughal Empire. So Aurangzeb's misguided policy, that is hard-headed attitude towards the Rajputs, the Marathas, the Jats. And when the Aurangzeb died in 1707, so all these people their successors were not that great, and over centralized system of administration, failure to make good alliances, religious fanaticism, it weakened the stable Mughal polity. Now there were incompetent successors, internal rebellions, and attack of foreign invaders, especially like Nadir Shah, Ahmad Shah Abdali. They paved the way for Mughal decline. Where did these invaders came from? They came from Afghanistan. And most important reason was the successors were not competent enough, and they could not evolve with the evolving time, and that is why the Mughal Empire fell flat on its face. Now there was emergence of regional polities, like the provincial governors who were under the Mughal. They set up independent states like Hyderabad, Bengal and Awadh, and some regional states were set up by the rebels against the Mughals, like the Marathas, the Sikhs, the Jats and the Afghans. And all the vassal chiefs and provincial governors of the Mughals, they became the de facto rulers. So what is it trying to say? They are trying to say that all those people who are power hungry, as soon as they got the opportunity, they made their own region as independent, so to speak, and all these regions became independent. And then the third point is rise and expansion of the British power in India. So Britishers came on its own, and the rise and expansion of the British power opened a new phase in the history of India, and by 1765 they had brought the eastern India under their control, and they gradually expanded their territories towards north and the south. So what happened in 1765? So they got the Diwani rights in Bengal, where they could charge for revenue, etc. So these developments during the mid 18th century gave rise to a fragmented polity, and the ultimate beneficiary of which were the British, who consolidated their empire in India. So that was the how you have to answer this question. Then you have the third question: why did the moderates fail to carry conviction with the nation about their proclaimed ideology and political goals by the end of 19th century? So answer here is first of all, you will have to name some moderate leaders like Dadabhai Nehruji, Firoz Shah Mehta, M.G. Ranade, Badruddin Tayyabji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. They lit the torch of freedom struggle but could not spread its light to the masses. Because they had complete faith in British sense of justice, they were loyal to the British government, they were working for gradual, slow, piecemeal reforms within the constitutional limits. They were not thinking out of the box. They believed in trickling down of enlightenment from educated to masses. They considered British rule as boon for modernization of India, and they failed to resonate with the masses. And the moderates were considered as a forum for elites like lawyers and generalists, and their method of prayer, petition, persuasion, representation and deputation, it was called as method of mendicancy. They lacked faith in the masses and had contradictions within themselves on issues like permanent settlement, factory reforms, etc. However, despite their failure to create a true mass movement, the moderates succeeded in exposing the true character of the British imperialism by giving the drain theory and in raising the political consciousness among the people on various issues. So that is why the moderates could not do it what they set out to do, and we'll cover all the 20 questions in this course. So thank you for watching this. Hey guys, what's up? So in the first lesson we discussed question number 1 to 3 and their model answers, and how you have to go about it, and how do you go about answering them, and how do you write the keywords and phrases which the examiner really wants, and based on which you are given the marks. So here model answers for UPSC CSE Mains GS paper 1 2017 from 4 to 6 we will discuss, and we will finish the entire 20 questions in this course. So what problems are germane to the decolonization process in the Malaya Peninsula? Okay, so which are related to this. So what is Malaya Peninsula? First of all, you need to understand. Okay, it is not Hindi Malay. Okay, so Malaya Peninsula, it comprises of the current part of the Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand and Myanmar. And just like India and half of the world, they attracted the British in the late 18th century, and by the end of 19th century they controlled most of the peninsula. They means Britishers. Okay, typical colonial story till now. Now what happened? Now things become interesting. So during Second World War, Japanese invaded the peninsula, and instead of getting the freedom in 1947, they got it in 1957. So even 12 years after the World War, they did not get independence. So after the war, a Federation of Malaya was created under British protection because of that, and Malaya got its independence only in 1957. But states like India, Pakistan, they got it in 1947, just 2 years after the World War II. So decolonization process in this region was not easy. That is why it took 10 years, and it was beset with its own set of problems. Now let us look at what are these set of problems. because then it will make us easy to understand what actually happened. So first of all, it is a very complicated area, and it consisted of 9 states. Now each were ruled by Sultan. There were 2 British settlements, Malacca and Penang, and there was a small island of Singapore. So their consolidation into a federation was a challenge. So this is one of the biggest reason. Then second is the population was very multiracial, very multiracial. Mostly there were Malays, there were Chinese, there were some Indians, there were some Europeans as well, and they had different interests altogether, so they wanted to pursue different things, and they had disagreements related to issues regarding the federation. For example, Malay did not wanted that Chinese, they were especially against the Chinese becoming citizens, so they opposed the weakening of the Malay rulers and granting the citizenship to ethnic Chinese people in Malaysia. Now third point is Chinese communist guerrillas led by Chin Peng, who had otherwise resisted the Japanese. So now what they did was they started the strikes and violence against the British forces, and it forced the British forces to declare a state of emergency, which even further delayed the Malayan independence. And finally, after separation of Singapore in 1965, that is roughly 50 years ago, coming up of Malaysia was there, the decolonization process was completed in true sense in the Malay Peninsula. So I hope you know what happened in Malay Peninsula now. So it was an important question. Question number 5. How does the Juno mission of NASA help us to understand the origin and evolution of Earth? Now this is again an important question because we are the citizens of Earth, so we should know about Earth. So NASA's Juno spacecraft, the basic information, it was launched in 2011 to study the Jupiter's atmosphere, magnetic environment, weather patterns, etc. But since the gas giants, if you know about the gas giants, it can also be like you can extrapolate it to the terrestrial planets like Earth. So it can shed light on the history, formation and evolution of Earth. So if you map Jupiter's gravitational fields, magnetic fields, etc., so Juno can help in finding out if Jupiter had a central core or not, which will help in establishing how the planet was formed. So this is an important process, and same process of formation may be attributed to Earth too, because we are in the same solar system, and chances are the evolution of the planets is virtually same in the same solar system. So if you know about Jupiter's composition, it could reveal about early solar system, and because the gas giants are believed to have played a very major role in the process of planet formation, because their huge masses allowed them to shape the orbits of other objects. It includes planets, asteroids, comets within their planetary systems. So it will be very helpful if we can know Jupiter's composition, and because it will reveal about early solar system, and that is why these missions are very important, because ultimately we want to solve the fundamental problem that what is life, what is meaning of life, what is universe, what is the origin of universe, how big is the universe. Then Juno will also help in finding out the amount of water and ammonia in Jupiter's atmosphere, and which will help in determining which planet formation theory is correct. So it is going there to find out the water and ammonia in Jupiter's atmosphere. And finally, Juno can map like Jupiter's intense magnetic field, and it will study the planet's auroras. Aurora borealis, aurora australis are there in India. They are called as northern lights, bright lights, southern lights respectively. And as the magnetic field, atmospheric and internal composition and auroras are interrelated and are also applicable to Earth, it can help us in understanding the evolution of Earth's own magnetic field. So that is why in so many ways Juno can help us in studying Earth. Question number 6 is, in spite of adverse environmental impact, coal mining is still inevitable for development. Discuss. So don't negate this statement, just say unfortunately this statement is correct. So coal, also called as black gold. See, petroleum is also called as black gold, so don't debate on that also. So it forms a crucial fuel for the engine of development. Okay. So without it, the development engine will not run, especially for next 30-40 years. And this is especially true for countries like India and China, which are poor and developing countries. Despite that, coal role is there in pollution, global warming, climate change, etc. So the mining and burning of coal causes significant air, water and soil pollution. So that point is absolutely clear. and the emission of greenhouse gases from power plants, they enhance the global warming. So that point is also correct. Yet coal is considered to be inevitable for development. Why? Because coal is dirt cheap, it is widely available, it is easily mined source of energy compared to other fossil and non-fossil sources. So this point is 100% well taken. Now developing countries, which includes our own country, India and China. See, we have such a huge population. If total there are 7 point, let's say 5 billion people right now, so out of them almost roughly I am saying 2.7 billion are Indian or Chinese. So that is more than one third population of the entire world is in India and China. So developing countries like India and China have rich coal mines and huge power demand, but they also have more than 60% of their power generation from coal based power plants. Okay. Then electricity demand in India is expected to double by 2022, and nuclear power generation is very costly, ecologically risky as seen in Fukushima and Chernobyl, and solar power needs expansion and hydropower involves issues such as displacement, flooding. But coal is also required as a raw material in steel and heavy industry, engineering industry. It has a multiplier effect on other sectors, like it will help in providing employment, especially in poor and backward areas. So thus prima facie means on the face of it, it appears that coal is indispensable for development in the near term, yet due to its unsustainable and polluting nature, its use should be reduced gradually and use of alternative and clean sources like nuclear, solar, wind should be promoted. So thank you for watching this lesson. Hey guys, what's up? So let us discuss the model answers for UPSC Civil Services Mains GS paper 1, and we are discussing question number 7 to 9. So mention the advantages of the cultivation of pulses, because of which the year 2016 was declared as the International Year of Pulses by United Nations. Now here, what are the keywords? First of all, you have to mention the advantages. Don't mention disadvantages. Okay, question is not asking for disadvantages. Obviously, everything has pros and cons, but nobody gives a crap in this answer about disadvantages. And they are already saying that they want to give a pro pulse angle, and especially give it in the context of Indian settings. Obviously, there are some advantages which go globally as well, but especially they are asking for Indian setting as well. So you can start by saying that cultivation of pulses has various economic, social and ecological advantages as mentioned below. Then you can start with economic advantages. So economy wise, obviously it is much costlier. So if you go out on the grocery shop, you will realize that rice and wheat are much cheaper as compared to pulses. So pulses will fetch good price in the market. That part is absolutely clear. So if you cultivate pulses, it will give farmer more money, more source of livelihood, especially in India, because we are the largest producer of the pulses. We are the largest consumer of the pulses, because hundreds and millions of Indians do not eat non-vegetarian food. So for them, pulses becomes a good protein source. Second is export of pulses helps in giving farmers better price, augmenting forex reserves, reducing current account deficit of the country. So because of that point is also very clear. Now pulses help in improving the soil fertility, which in turn helps in more agricultural production. So the farm residues can be used as animal fodder, which will help the dairy sector. तो मतलब such a good point है, इससे तो अच्छा कुछ हो ही नहीं सकता. Then ecological advantages, let's see. So pulse cultivation generally involves multiple cropping systems. So it will enhance your soil fertility, improve yields. They also have these, like if you are having nodules and there, which will help in nitrogen fixation, like hemoglobin, etc., rhizobium bacteria. It will also contribute to a more sustainable food system. They have a very low water footprint compared with other protein sources, and they can be grown in even poor soils where other crops cannot be cultivated. So if you compare it with other protein sources like meat has a very high water footprint. Now pulses can play an important role in climate change adaptation, since they have a very broad genetic diversity from which climate resilient varieties can be selected and or bred. Social advantages here includes like pulses are a critical and inexpensive source of plant-based proteins, vitamins and minerals, and it helps in food and nutrition security, especially of the poor people. And in India, use of pulses in midday meal in schools has helped in checking the malnutrition of the children. Now, pulse cultivation will help the farmer in their sustenance and upliftment in socio-economic ladder. So that point is also correct. And finally, it also helps in reducing regional imbalance. For example, because between pulse growing central India and cereal growing northwestern India like Punjab, Haryana, etc. Okay, guys. So let us discuss question number 8. How does the cryosphere affect the global climate? So what is cryo? Cryo means cold, ice. So cryosphere is that part of Earth which consists of snow, glaciers, ice caps, frozen ground, etc. And it is the second largest component of the climate system after the ocean. So cryosphere acts like a highly reflective blanket and it protects the earth from getting too warm. So that is the first point. It is a very important point. Then snow and ice have very high albedo value. So it means that majority, more than 90% of the sunlight which strikes the snow, it gets reflected back. And their presence or absence will affect the heating and cooling over the earth's surface. So more the snow, more it will be reflected back and less the temperature will rise. And that's why they will influence the entire planet's energy balance. Then changes in snow and ice cover will affect your air temperature, sea levels, ocean currents, storm patterns all over the world. For example, melting of Arctic sea ice and fresh water influx can slow down or divert the North Atlantic currents. It will impact other sea currents and temperatures around the globe. Now there is some permafrost, permanently frozen soil in tundra region. So if you melt it, it will release the carbon trapped within the soil and into the atmosphere as methane, and which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. Now, just as cryosphere influence climate, changes in climate can also impact cryosphere. So it goes both ways. So global warming and climate change have responsible for cryospheric changes like reduction in Greenland and Antarctic ice sheet, melting of mountain, alpine glaciers and so on. And through positive feedback, as atmosphere heats, ice will melt, underlying surface absorbs more heat emitting terrestrial radiation and it will consequently heat the atmosphere. Now in view of the threat posed on the cryosphere due to global warming, so the global community, we need to work together for curbing the fossil fuel emission, shifting towards non-fossil and renewable sources, avoiding exploitation, environmental degradation, especially in the polar areas, and cryosphere needs to be treated as a global common. Question number 9. In the context of the diversity of India, can it be said that the regions form cultural units rather than the states? Now give reasons with example for your viewpoint. So here first of all decide your viewpoints. The question is nudging you towards saying that this is thus. So India has a rich linguistic, racial, religious and caste diversity, and the cultural diversity is reflected in different traditions, customs, language, rituals, art forms in different regions of India. Now it can be considered that regions rather than the states form the cultural units. For example, the 4 southern states, they have different languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, but their individual culture has been derived from a common Dravidian culture. So that point is also very much correct. So therefore there are a lot of similarities in these 4 states despite having different languages and despite being different states in traditions, social customs, religious rituals and art forms of these states. For example, Carnatic music is same in all the 4 states, Dravidian architecture, worshipping of Shiva and Vishnu in temples, etc. are very common. Then similarly, the northeastern region shows the dominance of tribal culture, prevalence of animism, naturalism in hilly forested areas. Now the people are very dependent on forest dependent society and economy, socially cohesive units of people, though there is a great deal of linguistic diversity. Now the northern region can be considered another cultural unit as the state within it has similar cultural traits. For example, Hindi as common language, agriculture based society, dressing, food and other social habits, music, dance forms like Hindustani and Bollywood music, Natak and Nautanki, example Ramlila and so on. So thus, except some states, Goa, because it evolved altogether as different under Portuguese rule, most of the states can be grouped in different cultural regions. So I hope you are getting which points to write in the answers. So we'll continue the discussion. Thank you. Hey guys, what's up? So we continue the discussion on model answers for UPSC Civil Service Examination Mains GS Paper 1 2017. and we have already covered question number 1 to 9. So let us discuss question number 10 to 12. What are the two major legal initiatives by the state since independence addressing discrimination against the scheduled tribes? So scheduled tribes, just like scheduled castes, they have been discriminated a lot, and they were even named the criminal tribes or denotified tribes by the Britishers. So you can understand they had taken their land and they were uprooted, and they did not allow their forest waste to continue, and they were discriminated a lot. So you can answer this question by scheduled tribes have been facing discrimination for centuries because they have different culture, they have different tradition, they have different lifestyle, they have different racial features, and Indian Constitution strived to give them rights and protection under various articles like Articles 15/4, Article 29, which is cultural and educational rights, and Schedules 5 and 6. So they are there. Yet atrocities against STs and their alienation from mainstream society, it still continued for decades after independence, highlighting the need for legal and other initiatives. So these points are absolutely clear. So the two major legal initiatives for protection of STs against discrimination includes, so first is Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Prevention of Atrocities Act of 1989. So what does this act do? So this act says that if you are discriminated only because of your caste, like scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, you can lodge a complaint against the person or a group in a police station, and this strict action will be taken. And this act was brought in due to inadequacy of Prevention of Civil Right Act of 1955 and Indian Penal Code to check the discrimination and atrocities. So there are same basically law for scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. So there are no different laws. And in line with Article 17 of the Constitution, that is abolition of untouchability. So this act made discrimination against SCs and STs a criminal offence, and there is a very stringent punishment, and it also provided for relief and compensation to the victims. The Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Recognition of Forest Right Act of 2006. So it recognizes the ownership rights of the tribes and other forest dwellers over land and other forest resources, and it denied to them for decades due to discriminatory colonial forest laws, which are like Indian Forest Act of 1927 and practices. So minor forest produce like basic fruits, etc., they will go to the scheduled tribe and they can use it to continue their lifestyle. So apart from these laws, scheduled tribes also need education, health, food security, employment, development of infrastructure in the tribal areas, which will provide them a sort of level playing field with other sections of the society. The spirit of tolerance and love is not only an interesting feature of Indian society from very early times, but it is also playing an important role at the present. Elaborate. How do I elaborate on this? So they are saying that the statement is absolutely correct. You don't need to apply your brain whether it is correct or not. You just have to elaborate why. So tolerance and love have been intrinsic values of Indian society since ancient times. So whenever such questions are asked, these are nostalgic questions, so you can invoke the ancient times. So in ancient India, you can say there were three main religions of India, that is Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. All these three religions, that is H, B, J, all they developed at the same time. So Hinduism technically is not a religion, it is a way of life, and it was there much before then Buddhism and Jainism came. But overall respect they developed around the same time. So Buddhism and Jainism were developed around 2500 years ago. Okay, so they taught tolerance, love, sympathy and kindness for all. So that point is there. And there were many rulers including Ashoka the Great who propagated these virtues to masses through edicts, inscriptions, royal missions, etc. So Ashoka stands tall among those rulers, and he even sent his own son and daughter to Sri Lanka and other places in Asia to spread Buddhism. And tolerance and love was the core of his policy of Dhamma. Okay, so third point is, despite the developments within Hinduism, that is proliferation of various castes, linguistic groups, religious sects, but conflicts between them was at bare minimum level. But if you see in Christianity, if you see in Europe and USA, there was huge conflicts between various subgroups of Christianity. So medieval India, despite the advent of Muslim rule and spread of Islam, religious conflicts were rarely observed. You will not find the instance of riots. Some of the Muslim rulers like Akbar, they gave patronage to artists and intellectuals of different faiths, like people like Birbal. Okay, so all these are Hindus, and they had inter-religious marriage alliances also. Okay, Jodhabai, and it ensured social harmony. And during Bhakti and Sufi movements, the ballads of Mirabai, dohas of Kabir, preachings of Nanak, so like Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, and other saints, they conveyed love and tolerance as its core message. And in modern times, these virtues are even more significant than ever before. To prevent incidents like atrocities on Dalits, minorities, religious and communal conflicts, there are so many rights which have happened in last 70 years in India. To curb religious fanaticism, intolerance towards progressive artists, political critics, so people are getting shot in daylight, and for ensuring the integrity of India and brotherhood among the masses, which will augment nation's social capital. Question number 12. Examine how the decline of traditional artisanal industry in colonial India crippled the rural economy. So you have to explain that how come when the traditional artisans were destroyed, it in turn crippled the entire rural economy. So British policies had a deep impact on the traditional artisanal industry and rural economy, and it completely changed their structure to meet the needs of the newly emergent industrialized economy of Britain. So they said that the Indian handicrafts collapsed under the colonial rule due to the competition from machine-made goods imported from Britain. Now Britain flooded the Indian markets with cheap products, especially the cotton textiles, and the railways facilitated the reach of these goods to the remotest part in India and the procurement of raw materials from these parts. And following, since there is a policy of free trade, the East India Company compelled the Indian craftsmen to sell their goods and services at a very meager price, which they in turn sold in Britain at very high prices. So impact on rural economy, let's say, so rural economy became a supplier of raw material and importer of finished British goods, so which is a very bad state to be in, because supply was, let's say, at £1, but what they were getting was 100 times more or 10 times more or 5 times more. So it was not like they were not able to buy anything. Now Indian craftsmen started abandoning their ancestral trade, and it destroyed the self-sufficient village economy, because destruction of the traditional industries led to the overcrowding in the agrarian sector. Everybody became farmer. Now agrarian sector was not much developed because of various reasons, so it could not cause lead to mass unemployment and rural stress. Further, there was overcrowding, easily available agricultural labor. Zamindars started to exploit them, and land revenue officials increased. And many artists and their families started migrating towards urban areas, but since they will not find any jobs, so they created slums. Okay, or they even worked in factories. So thank you for watching this lesson. Hey guys, what's up? So let us discuss question number 13 to 16. Highlight the importance of the new objectives that got added to the vision of Indian independence since 20s of the last century. So in 20s here means 1920s. So the third decade of the 20th century, or between 1920 to 1930, it became a watershed in the modern Indian history as new forces and objectives were incorporated into the national movement. So the Mahatma Gandhi came to full force, and his philosophy of Satyagraha had found its appeal within the masses, and freedom movement had now become a truly mass-based movement. And Gandhi's ideas on Swaraj, Ram Rajya, democracy, village economy, they took real concrete shape in the period. Then there were also Marxist and socialist ideas, and they spread and influenced young nationalists like Jawaharlal Nehru, Subhash Chandra Bose, and they in turn opposed Gandhian ideals and political programs. And they said that slow changes will not work. We have to give radical solution for country's ills. All over the country, students' leagues were formed. Peasants started agitating against colonial laws like Rampa Revolt, Bardoli Satyagraha. Trade unionism was gained space, signifying the aspiration of every section for a free, equitable and just society. So that point is there. Then in the quest of social equality, various caste movements took place in the decade, like self-respect movement, Justice Party, Satyashodak Samaj, due to which social justice became one of the core objectives of Indian independence. And another development was growth of revolutionary terrorism. So you can avoid the word using terrorism also, but Bipin Chandra uses this. Due to disillusionment of youth from Gandhian methods and influence of communist ideas and Russian Revolution, and though revolutionaries later turned socialism, their heroics inspired masses and later movements. Then there was communal nationalism, which was seen for the last time in Khilafat non-cooperation movement, when Hindus and Muslims, they put a joint front against the British and gave way to extreme communalism, and finally it eventually led to the two-nation theory, ultimately resulting in India and Pakistan. So the development in 20s further reverberated in the next 2 decades due to growth, spread and incorporation of our ideas and ideals, which helped in intensification of freedom movement and in shaping the idea of independent India. So this is a very good answer of standard model answer. Question number 14. Account for variations in ocean salinity and discuss its multidimensional effect. So what is ocean salinity? It is basically the total content of dissolved salts in seawater, and it varies both horizontally as well as basically this is vertically and this is horizontally. Various reasons include rate of evaporation. So if rate of evaporation is more salt will be there as compared to water, so concentration will increase. And evaporation is controlled by temperature, relative humidity or stability in the lower layers of the atmosphere. So in equatorial region there are a lot of clouds and the relative humidity is very high, so evaporation will be low. In subtropical regions they record the highest salinity because they have clear skies and descending air currents, and they favor a very high rate of evaporation. And so salinity will be highest here because of low water, and it will gradually decrease towards the equator and the poles. So I think that point is very clear. Now polar areas see extremely low evaporation rates and because almost non-existent, and thereby they have the lowest salinity. Now supply of clean and fresh water. So fresh water from rainfall like equatorial regions, melting of sea ice, icebergs and river will dilute the seawater and will reduce its salinity. Anything which adds more water will reduce salinity. Anything which takes away water will increase salinity. Then there are prevailing winds. So the trade winds transport warm and saline water from the eastern part of the ocean towards the western part, and upwelling of cooler and less saline water in eastern part will reduce the salinity there. Finally, you have mixing through the movement of the ocean water. For example, tides, currents and waves cause continuous mixing of surface layers with subsurface layers of the oceans, and warm ocean currents carry warm and more saline waters towards the polar regions. For example, movement of Gulf Stream will raise the salinity in the Northeast Atlantic Ocean, and salinity generally increases with depth, okay, as you go down, but vertical variation is different in different latitudes, again due to evaporation and influx or absence of fresh water. So it has multidimensional effect. So salinity will affect seawater density, which in turn affect govern ocean circulation and climate. And ocean current circulation conveyor belt may get affected because of global warming and climate change, and in turn it can affect the wind patterns, various ocean phenomena and global climate. And marine ecosystem is also greatly affected by salinity variation because they have evolved over millions of years to live in a particular saline environment, and it can lead to death of fishes and marine organisms. Question number 15. Petroleum refineries are not necessarily located nearer to crude oil production areas, particularly in many of the developing countries. Explain its implication. So they are not located because of various reasons. So first of all, industrial location theory suggests industries can be set up either near the production of the raw material, source of raw material, or the market to minimize the transport cost. So raw material, that is crude oil, was a less decisive factor here for refinery location because of insignificant weight loss post refining and fear of refinery becoming redundant after exhaustion of oil well. Then second point is crude oil producing countries in Middle East and Africa, they suffer from war, political instability, and therefore MNCs were reluctant to set up refineries here, and there is very little domestic demand in these countries due to lack of industrial development and underdeveloped market. And further, the development of large tankers and ships, pipelines and transportation network facilitated the bulk transportation of crude. So because of so much ease, why will you make it there anyway? So therefore refineries are located at either the port locations or the big markets. So USA, one of the biggest markets, developed refineries on east coast, and they source crude from Venezuela and West Asia, and they are already there around Rotterdam in Netherlands, Thames for London for European market, and Jamnagar in India. And implications include due to lack of value addition, the crude oil producing regions are at a disadvantage, and many of the crude oil producing countries have become oil dependent economy, and because they are like GDP is dependent on it. So around refinery locations, many auxiliary industries developed, resulting into employment generation and industrial and regional development. So this is a typical, and Jamnagar is a perfect example. And finally, there is a risk of piracy if you are transporting it, especially around Gulf of Eden and Somali coast, and oil spillage can also happen, which can harm the marine ecology. Last question for this lesson: in what ways can floods be converted into a sustainable source of irrigation and an all-weather inland navigation in India? So people think floods have destruction, but they can also managed well. They can become boon for irrigation and inland navigation. So they are an annual phenomenon, especially for Himalayan and some peninsular rivers. So how do you utilize it? By proper management and utilization. So you construct storage reservoirs and dams, obviously goes without saying, multi-purpose projects for several flood-prone rivers for irrigation, drinking, industries, power generation. Then you do watershed management so that it just not only helps in irrigation and agriculture but is also in the socio-economic development of the region. Then try to river interlinked. So the surplus water of Himalayan rivers can go to the deficit peninsular rivers and it can avoid the flood-like conditions. And assured irrigation can give big stimulus to agricultural production, especially the Deccan Peninsula. Then afforestation, development of green spaces, wetlands and bunds can help in slowing down of flood water and in recharge of groundwater. And in most of the agricultural areas, groundwater irrigation is the preferred method. And similarly, floods can also help in development of inland navigation. So national waterways on Ganga and Brahmaputra, they are suffering from decreased capacity because of reduced water flow. So flood water can augment water flow with regular dredging, improve channel capacity. So plying of heavier vessels become viable. And coastal floods, if managed well, can help in development of coastal shipping, like main objectives of Sagarmala project. So thank you for watching this lesson. Hey guys, what's up? So all the 20 questions will be covered in this particular lesson. We are finishing it off. So let's get started. What characteristics can be assigned to monsoon climate that succeeds in feeding more than 50% of the world population residing in monsoon Asia? So you can start. If agriculture is considered as the backbone of Asian economy, then monsoon can surely be considered its nervous system, which guides the Asian economy in its function. So Asian economies, especially that of India and China, are dependent on monsoon to feed their increasing population, and we have more than 1/3 of the world population in India and China alone, and more than 50% of the world population lives in monsoon Asia. So monsoon is defined as seasonal reversal of wind pattern and atmospheric circulation. It is a very complex phenomenon and it is a result of interaction and interlinkages of various processes like shifting of ITCZ and the heating of Tibetan Plateau, generation of tropical easterly jet stream, etc. And its general characteristic includes, so southwest monsoon occurs from June, July, September, August, 4 months, and moisture laden winds on reaching the southernmost point of Indian peninsula due to its topography become divided into two parts. One is Arabian Sea branch, one is Bay of Bengal branch. And around the time of its arrival, called the burst of monsoon, normal rainfall suddenly increases and continues regularly for several days. They are different from pre-monsoon showers because of their increase in rainfall and regularity. And around September, with the apparent shifting of sun towards the south and cooling off of landmass, air pressure starts increasing over North India. So it causes reversal of wind direction, and they are called as northeast monsoon or retreating monsoon, and they give a lot of rain to Tamil Nadu. Majority of the Tamil Nadu's rainfall happen through it. So as you can see, Tamil Nadu receive 50 to 60% rainfall through it, and even Sri Lanka receives through it. And East Asian monsoon affects large part of Indochina, Philippines, China, Taiwan, Korea and Japan. And there is a great variation in the intensity and frequency of rainfall year to year, and phenomena like El Nino, Indian Ocean Dipole, etc. will determine. El Nino usually weakens the monsoon. And in recent times, monsoon is becoming more and more unpredictable because of global warming and climate change. Question number 18. The women's questions arose in modern India as a part of the 19th century social reform movement. What are the major issues and debates concerning women in that period? First is fight for betterment of status of women in society was the most important agenda of social reform movements of the 19th century. Like women's question otherwise were neither raised nor addressed, and they were accorded a low status in society. They were subjected to Parda system, early marriage, sati, widows could not remarry, women were denied education, inheritance and property, social equality. Even there was polygamy was prevalent among both the Hindus and Muslims that time. So the social reformers of this period basically appealed to the doctrine of individualism and equality, and it argued that true religion did not support an inferior status of women, and they raised voices against degrading social customs like polygamy, child marriage, etc. So who worked basically? So Raja Ram Mohan Roy declared the practice of sati via government in 1829 as illegal. So Brahmo Samaj had the issue of widow remarriage high, and Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar got the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856 passed. And Vishnu Shastri Pandit founded Widows Remarriage Association. Jagannath Shankar Seth Bhau Daji worked tirelessly for women education in Maharashtra, and relentless effort of a Parsi reformer B.M. Malabari exhorted the government to enact the age of consent age, which forbade the child marriage. Question number 19. Distinguish between religiousness and religiosity, which are the same thing, and communalism, giving one example of how the former, that is religiousness, has got transformed into later in independent India. So religiousness or religiosity is defined as an individual's conviction, devotion, veneration towards a divinity. It's his own personal matter. But communalism, on the other hand, signifies difference between various religious groups and people from different community, and they have a lot of vested interest. So as long as religiosity influences individuals or groups to maintain social and religious harmony, despite difference in religious and social interest, communalism is suppressed. The moment religiosity incentivizes and interest of different religious groups clash, so this religiosity is transformed into communalism, which in turn get transformed into riots and other situations, which is completely avoidable. So this transformation is evident in independent India. So you might have heard about Ayodhya and Ram Mandir issue. So Babri Masjid was completely destroyed here. Similarly, car sevaks who were coming in one of the Gujarat trains, they were killed in Godhra incidents, and they were a result of clash in religious interest of Hindu and Muslim groups. So second point is brotherhood of Hindu and Muslims and the spirit of Kashmiriyat saw a serious blow due to external extremist terrorism. Otherwise we would be dealing with them only, which are coming through Pakistan, and it resulted earlier into mass killing, large scale exodus of Kashmiri Pandits, communal violence, and ever going unrest in the valley. Third point is religious minorities are often targeted by fundamentalist groups of other religion. For example, Muslims are attacked for eating beef, and Christian tribals are discriminated for their religious rituals and practices. Now this transformation is also seen in political sphere in the form of political support for communal groups, significant role of fundamentals in garnering votes and winning elections, and so on. And last question for this lesson is the growth of cities as IT hubs, that is information technology hubs, has opened up new avenues of employment but has also created problems. So substantiate this evidence with examples. So with globalization, technological development, and growth of tertiary sector, especially the services sector, cities have emerged as IT hubs. Cities around Delhi, NCR, Bangalore, Hyderabad, they attract millions of people every year in search of employment opportunities, and through this rapid urbanization helps in development of various economic sectors, availability of labor for industries, and employment opportunity for masses. It has also given rise to certain problems. So the IT hubs around Delhi, NCR, that is Gurgaon, Noida, Faridabad, they attract hordes of migrants from another northern and eastern states, and due to inadequacy of housing, electricity, water, sanitation, etc., to cater to the needs of this population, slum develops, traffic congestion happens, pollution, crime, etc., they become daily phenomenon. And due to emergence of conurbation around Delhi NCR, the tier 1 towns have been neglected, and due to rapid growth of service sector in cities and decline of agriculture, rural urban migrate is on divide, and this results in rural and unemployment, unemployment, excess availability of cheap labor and their exploitation. And finally, due to proliferation of cyber cities, manufacturing sector has not received the focus it deserved, and industrial revolution is still missing. So despite these problems, IT revolution in India has made India an IT superpower and knowledge economy, which is helping in harnessing our demographic dividend. So thank you for watching this lesson.